In order for fat loss phases to be successful, to be sustainable, and to be enjoyable, try thinking more in the long term about the things you want to achieve and the way in which you want to achieve that. Too many people think of, how do I get this result in the shortest amount of time? And thinking like that often leads to a maximal amount of pressure and a minimal amount of enjoyment. And unfortunately, as a result of that, minimal results as well. So folks, in order to make that next fat loss phase you've got lined up the most successful, most sustainable, and fundamentally most enjoyable one yet, ask yourself, what are the things that you can do that are the easiest, most simple and straightforward parts of the process that will equate to the largest amount of result? They are the calorie deficits, they are the training days, they are the steps on a daily basis. Those things are the things that matter the most, and those are the things that will get you the best results. Not focusing on the smaller things that make very small differences but cause you a lot of stress. Fundamentally, we want this process to be enjoyable, we want this process to be successful, and we want this process to be sustainable. So above all, make sure the goals we're setting are realistic, the timeframes are manageable, and what you have included within the process is all the things you enjoy to a moderate level, and make sure we're not over-restricting and making ourselves miserable in the process. Guys, welcome to week 4. Let's get into it.
Jesus Christ, that's bright. Kitchen, got some really cool surprise in that box. Might have to show you actually. Do you know what? I'll show you in. Hey folks, and welcome back to the JLX YouTube channel. It's me, Xander, as always, and we're going to kick off this week with a question like we did last week. Hopefully you enjoyed the new style intro, by the way. Would you be so kind as to let me know in the comments if you like those kinds of videos with kind of narrative over the top of them? And of course, as always, if you wouldn't mind smashing that like button, hitting subscribe, and of course dropping a comment if you've got a question or you just want to support the video. Massively appreciate it, and I'm always a big believer in a value for value transaction. So you do that for me, I'll obviously answer your questions. Winner, winner. Answer your questions for dinner. I should really stop with these jokes because they're shocking. Anyway, right, so we got Matt asking the first question this week. Matt's question starts with, great stuff, Xander, really informative, and can't wait to see your results over the next few months. So firstly, massively appreciate that, much love. And secondly, I think we're talking about protein here. So what we've got here is, when determining a macro split to hit the target calories, would you always go with more than a gram per pound of body weight, or adjust it to be closer to 1 gram per pound of lean muscle for someone who is carrying relatively high fat compared to muscle? Otherwise, the macro split can seem very low on carbs and very high on protein, which seems difficult to achieve in practice. This is an absolute belter of a question, and it's been answered many times in literature, in research, and also in practice. So when it comes to your lean body mass, fundamentally, that is how protein should be gauged. So our protein targets, based on scientific evidence, should be based on our lean body mass. However, we run into a couple of issues there. One of those issues is that not many people have an MRI or a DEXA scanner. So a DEXA scanner is a bit like an MRI machine, but essentially both of which are the most and are the gold standard ways of telling body composition. So you would need one of them essentially, or you would need at least a scan to be able to determine your lean body mass. And from that you could then say, okay, I need to eat 100 grams of protein or 105 grams of protein or whatever that lean body mass is. This obviously is a bit of an issue, and so you could say, well, let's do body fat testing via calipers, but unless you're someone who's done hundreds and hundreds of caliper tests on a number of different people, the chances are your accuracy is going to be a bit shit, unfortunately. So we run into another issue where, okay, well, look, we need to find out, lean body mass to be able to determine this amount of protein, but I cannot figure out how to do that. So we run into quite a few issues with trying to figure out lean body mass, and essentially it comes to the point where there's no viable way of doing it. So Dr. Eric Helms wrote a paper in 2018 now, off the top of my head, where they looked at essentially, is there a better way of doing it? And one of those ways was to take full body mass and say, okay, well, what if we base it on the body mass? So you say a gram per pound of body mass. So the question we're asking here is, well, how do we find a happy middle point there? Well, as a coach, this is what I do. I basically have worked with people now for 8 years, so the best part of a decade. And what I do is I will eyeball a lot of the time. So if I get somebody's progress photos in, I will look at those progress photos, and these are the original photos when they obviously join the team, and I will say, okay, this individual is 180 pounds. I can see that, you know, generally speaking, there's a lot of fat mass to muscle mass ratio. So would I go in with them and give them 180 grams of protein? Absolutely not. Is that sustainable for them? Absolutely not. And because the majority of my clients are female, let's say that female is still 180 pounds, what we'd be saying is, for them to be in a deficit, let's just say for argument's sake, they would need 1900 calories, okay? Now, if you're eating 180 grams worth of protein, times that by 4, which would be 800 minus 80, which is 720. So you would have 720 calories worth of protein, all right, out of that 1900. You take the minimal fat allowance for that individual, which is 0.3 grams per pound. So combine that with what we've already got. Quick maths, here we go. Combine that with what we've already got. We're up to nearly 1400 calories worth of just protein and fat. Then, of course, you have the carbohydrates remaining. This is actually pretty much what my macros are at the moment. However, I've got a lot of experience with this. Fitness is a lifestyle for me. It's much easier. For most people who are that body weight and are trying to lose weight, they're trying to create a lifestyle that suits them better. And they also don't have 180 pounds of lean muscle mass. So what I would do is I would eyeball that, and I would say, okay, well, looking at your physique, looking at where you're at, looking at your training history and things such like, looking at your current training so I can see the numbers that you're hitting, I would say that your lean mass is probably closer to someone of about 130 pounds or 140 pounds. So let's set your protein there and we'll take it from there. And that's a way to combine what's both effective in terms of giving them the right amount of protein for their lean muscle mass and to support their training and their goals and their satiation, but also not too much protein, that they're still able to, you know, get a decent amount of carbohydrate in that will support their training, but also create a well-rounded diet that will facilitate sustainability, not just cripple them with 200 grams of protein and 100 grams of carbs, which is very tough. I can tell you that for free. So yeah, there's your answer, Matt. Essentially, the answer to your question is this: no, I would not go in at 1 gram per pound. You could say, at your discretion, let's say they are 150 pounds, you might start them on 120 grams. Set a range, 120 to 130. Let's see if we can build up into that, and as the weight comes down, see how we're faring. If we're thinking, yeah, training's going really well, we're making really good gains, maybe we can increase that protein a little bit, because that may encourage a little bit more recomposition through that process and may also help you get better results. So I hope that answers your question, and if you've got any more, fire them my way. The important thing to remember with any supplements, there are some which have loads of scientific evidence, like creatine, vitamin D, things like that, and there are some with very few, but sometimes those ones with very few evidence can be very cheap, so actually it's kind of, you're not really at a loss taking them, but there are some which are very expensive, which you definitely are at a loss for taking. So we'll go through mine, we'll see what's what, and we'll go from there. Well, hopefully this is working, and I'm not blinding out the camera. This is a lovely colour, isn't it? Anyway, right, let's dive in. So, bedroom supplements, and I just mean supplements I keep in my bedroom, not supplements I need for the bedroom. Just in case. Instagram and YouTube's a funny place. You never know what people get up to. I'm digging myself a hole, which I am now going to get out of by cracking on with the 4 supplements I have in my bedside table. First off, vitamin D. Now, vitamin D3, first of all, very important. Why do I have this in my bedside table? Well, the meal I have that contains the most fat is in fact my dinner. Now, I do that for technical purposes because essentially I want to keep fat as far away from my workout window as possible. Should you care about that? No, not really. That's just something that I have managed to achieve by concentrating on these things well over the years, but it's not something you need to worry about. So essentially, vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, which means it is going to need fat in order for it to be soluble In other words, we need to digest fat at the same time we digest these to get the very most out of them. These are super cheap, at least they used to be. I haven't actually bought any for ages because I usually buy them in massive bulk. The research for vitamin D is just undeniable, to be honest. So I have 1 tablet a night, which is usually when I go to bed, which is probably about an hour and a half after I've eaten. So it's not directly with my meal, but it's the time where I can have it stack it the best, so it makes the most sense to me. Multivit, very standard. To be honest, I would just buy these in a shop. There's no need to buy them from My Protein or anything like that. The ones you get in a shop will be just fine. The reason I get these from My Protein is because they were free. Okay, so this actually arrived today. This is glucosamine and chondroitin. Now, this is one of those supplements, as I was saying, is probably not got much bang for its buck, to be honest. And you might ask, well, why do you take it? Well, firstly, I don't recommend it to anyone. So if you see people pushing glucosamine, which a lot of people do, but to be honest, the research on it's a little shit. So, you know, I think people have an agenda sometimes, like, oh, use my code, take this shit supplement. But this is, you know, anyway, I digress. The point I'm trying to make here is this. I've had 5 knee surgeries. I've already got some arthritis in that knee. It hurts every day without fail. I wake up, it hurts. I go to bed, it hurts. I walk downstairs, it hurts. Not half as much as it did before I had my last surgery, but it's there. I feel it every day. So glucosamine and chondroitin have been used in arthritic joints, people who struggle with arthritis, to try and help take the pain away and as an anti-inflammatory effect, because it also has turmeric in it, which is very anti-inflammatory. So you could say, yeah, okay, that sounds perfectly good. The research just isn't that good for it. But like I said earlier, sometimes things are worth taking the punt. They're worth actually going, yeah, maybe it's not the best, but hey, if it's going to help me less pain, I don't have to take paracetamol and ibuprofen, I'd much rather run with these bad boys. Next up, we have 5-HTP. Now, again, this is one of those supplements which has got some fairly good research for it in terms of sleep. HTP stands for 5-hydroxytryptophan. And if you know anything about the sleep protocol that we go through in order to fall asleep, you'll know that tryptophan plays a very essential role in that. You have your carbohydrate intake, then you will have insulin released, then you'll have your tryptophan, your serotonin, and that leads to an increase in melatonin. Melatonin obviously is what helps us to get into deep sleeps. 5-HTP also helps with lowering carb cravings. So while you're dieting, it could potentially be an option for you there as well. It's not why I take it. I take it because I want it to help my sleep. Does it help with sleep? Maybe, maybe not. But again, for me, it's worth that kind of cost to benefit ratio. So that's why I take that. So yeah, they're the 4 supplements that I've got in my bedside table. I would say 2 of them are a must for most people, especially if you're dieting. That's going to be the vitamin D3 and the multivit. The other 2 are cost to benefit me. I wouldn't recommend them necessarily to people. I don't recommend them to my clients in a general sense. Obviously, if there's a need for one of them, I might do, but generally speaking, I don't. So that covers those bits. We'll head downstairs and we'll get stuck into what we've got down there. All right, folks. So we're now obviously in the kitchen. Got some really cool surprise in that box. I might have to show you actually. Do you know what? I'll show you in the next video when I've prepared them. Yeah, that's what I'll do. They are honestly so cool. Very excited to give those guys a go, but I will put them in my next video because that's going to take some preparation time and I don't want to ruin it. Anyway, so into kitchen supplements. So these are the supplements I take every morning. The reason they're in my kitchen is because I come in here every morning, so that makes the habit stacking aspect of this much, much easier. The first one here is in a mini pot. These are omega-3 tablets. Now, a lot of people take a mixture of these. You can get, you know, omega-3, you can get omega-6, omega-9. You just don't need to do that. I would just take omega-3. Now, when it comes to whether you need to take omega-3 or not, that's a slightly different question because for me, I'm someone who doesn't like fish. So I am critically going to miss out on the free fatty acids that are essential from eating fish. So if you're someone who likes salmon, someone who likes mackerel, you're going to be getting plenty of these, especially if you eat them 2-3 times a week. But if you don't, then you could be missing out on those free fatty acids which are essential for so many things. Brain health, bone health, just general health actually, to be more specific. So it's key for us that we take something like this if we don't usually get a good enough ingestion of those free fatty acids. Now when it comes to buying these, one of the keys here is that people will often look at things and go, that's expensive, I'll get that, that must be great. Not the case. Now, with omega-3s or fish oils or things like that, one of the key things that you need to be looking out for are essentially the combined level of the two free fatty acids, EPA and DHA. Daily, we need somewhere between 800 milligrams and 1200 milligrams of these. That doesn't mean you have to supplement all, because you will get them through other foods and things like that, but generally speaking, I tend to go a fair way. So I usually, especially as I get deeper into my diet, I will tend to up my level of this because the chances of me getting those elsewhere are decreased. So I tend to take more as I go along. Now, in everyday life, if I'm gaining, I probably won't take very many of these. I might take 1 or 2. As I get to the end of my dieting phase, I might be increasing that to 3 or 4 so I can get the full 1,000. Whereas if I'm just taking the kind of 1 or 2, then I'll be getting somewhere like 500 to 600 combined with just these, and I'll get the rest through my diet. Now, the next thing I take is this, and this is cyclic dextrin. It's highly branched cyclic dextrin. It's basically a fancy word of saying it's sugar. It's carbohydrate. I put that in my morning shake that I take to the gym. It's not something I do when I'm gaining, although it can be a very good idea if you're someone who struggles with getting the calories in, so maybe something to consider. I do it while I am dieting because I find that I become very sensitive to food. So I'll try and minimize the food I have in the morning because it makes me more hungry. So if I have a big breakfast, i.e. I'm trying to get the carbs in for the session I'm about to have, I find that makes me really hungry. Although it's nice, it makes me hungry. So actually having a carb powder instead, although slightly counterintuitive because you could say, well, why didn't you eat those calories? Why didn't you eat those carbs? I personally find that it's a nice way to be able to get the fuel into the middle of the session because I'll drink this through my session without increasing any hunger stimulations. Next, obviously got protein. This is whey isolate. I take whey isolate because essentially I am lactose intolerant. Everyone is on a scale. It's not you are completely against lactose or you're fine. It's that everyone has a limit. My limit is much better than a lot of people's, but a lot worse than many others. So for me, I can handle, say, standard milk in my tea. I can even handle a bowl of cereal. But if I were to do that and have a protein shake, even if it was just normal whey with water, that would push me over the edge. I'd have some really bad stomach issues, which nobody wants. So anyway, it is more expensive. It's a lot more expensive, but for me, it's worth it because my health is important and it's something I'm fortunate enough to be able to facilitate. So if I have the funds to be able to do it, why would I compromise my health? Well, I wouldn't. So that's why I do it. Next up, we have creatine. Long story short, this opened in my bag whilst traveling for 3 hours. And anyone who knows anything about oh shit, lost my little scoops. There we go. Anyone who knows anything about creatine will know that this made a huge mess and actually ended up looking like a cocaine dealer on the way to my event. So that was great. Well, not great, but an exciting arrival. So yeah, I've taken that bad boy down now, so it can't do it again. So I will put all of these in my morning shake. I will have 40 grams of whey. I will have 5 grams of creatine, which is an optimal amount. I have that every day. No breaks, I don't come off it. And I'll also have 15 grams of the highly branched cyclic dextrin in my shake. That concludes that. Okay, so the last supplement I'm going to discuss is one that pretty much all of us take on an everyday basis. Probably don't necessarily see it as a supplement, but it really is a supplement. And that bad boy is caffeine. Now, I do like a Monster. I drink a lot of Monster. Not every day drink a lot of Monster. I just most days have a Monster. Contains about 150 milligrams of caffeine. Now, I also have a coffee in the morning, and I have this. I have a coffee kind of once I get home from the gym. Then I'll have this usually around lunchtime. It pushes me through the rest of the day. It doesn't disturb my sleep. I find it's very, very manageable for me. And actually, as I progress through my training block, I will actually increase the amount of caffeine I have. This was actually a trick I learned from Steve Hall from Revive Stronger. I'd never quite looked at it in the same way until I spoke to him about it, and it was a fantastic idea of his, whereby actually saying, in block 1, you don't really need any caffeine. Why are we taking loads of caffeine there? Why don't you hold off that and introduce it slowly as the blocks go on until you get to week 5, where you're really going to drop the hammer on your training, then throw the caffeine in there as well. Monumental difference, and it's just a really good idea. Whereas before, I was actually taking caffeine before every session, so I was having pre-workout at like 6 in the morning, then I'd come home. I wouldn't have a coffee then. I wasn't drinking coffee then, but I'd come home, usually have a Monster midday or whatever. What I tend to do now is I tend to not have that pre-workout until week 5. Then I'll come home, have my coffee, and I'll usually have a kind of Monster or something if I need it in the afternoon, just a bit of a healthy boost. So caffeine, of course, is a supplement. It's a stimulant. It is an ergogenic aid, not ergonomic. It is the most used stimulant in the world. Caffeine, if we're looking at optimal levels, we're looking at somewhere between 3 and 5 milligrams per kilo of body weight. So for me, I'm about 80 kilos at the moment. I weigh in pounds, so it's about 80 kilos. So if I times it by 3, that's 240, so that's 240 milligrams, or it's somewhere between there and say 400, it would be 400. So yeah, somewhere between 240 and 400 milligrams a day. Now, if I have 150 milligrams in that, I have usually only take half a scoop of pre-workout. I'm quite sensitive to it, so I don't need a lot. I'll have half a scoop of that, which is usually about 100 to 120. So that's already 170 plus my coffee, which is probably 130. So I probably do smack that 400 milligrams pretty tight. It makes me pretty good in week 5, but obviously balance that with the fatigue of the training and obviously the recovery requirements of that. Kind of balances itself out quite nicely. So yeah, that wraps up the supplements, and I want to make this very clear, you just don't need them. You really don't. I know I have a lot and it comes across as hypocritical, but to be honest, the way I see it is a lot of the supplements I take are for health benefits. So omega-3s, a health benefit, multivit, a health benefit, chondroitin and glucosamine, a health benefit. So those 3 I don't really class as sport supplements. I class those as health supporting supplements. So anybody who, anybody could take those. You don't have to be within the fitness realm. Creatine has some wonderful research coming out at the moment to do with cognition, potentially looking into dementia and things like that. So maybe creatine is something that everyday people, muggles, non-gym people, non-gym folks should be taking. Protein, again, that is a supplement, of course it is. Do just gym people need to take that? Not necessarily. If you didn't go to the gym, you could still take the protein. So I would say there's only a couple I take that aren't health related. I mean, you can chuck omega-3s in there. If you wanted to be healthy and you don't eat any fish, omega-3s would be a good shout. Hey, welcome back. We are in the JLX den at Den. I've no idea where that came. I've never called it the JLX den before. I've just completely made that up. I'm in my office. I'm losing the plot. Right, anyway, I've got my check-in up behind you and we're going to crack on with that. It's a really exciting week and I can't wait to share. So, without further ado, let's crack on. Was it a normal week at work? Yes, it was. Was it a normal week at the gym? Yes, because I did all my sessions. However, I trained Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in my Fitness First gym here, and then I trained Thursday and Friday in a Pure gym in Portsmouth. So, not completely normal. And that kind of leads us into our next point, which is, was I eating at home all week? No, I was not. We left on Wednesday night, which meant that we had Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday there. Hopefully what I'm showing you guys is that you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be on it all the time. Where we go, so we go and visit some family. As I said, we've got some really exciting things happening for us at the moment, which I can't share unfortunately, but really exciting things are happening. And so it's leading us to do a lot of traveling. Now, the problem with that is that I don't have full control over my nutrition while I'm away. And that's 4 days out of 7. So that's more than 50% of the week I don't have full control over my nutrition. But as you're about to see, that doesn't matter. Because what we need to do is focus, as I said at the very start, on the things we can control. How we control them, the stress levels we have towards them, and how we manage those scenarios and situations. That's what matters the most. And if we do those things, we get great results. So, speaking of results, weekly update. Week 3 average was 179.18. Week 4 average 177.04. So I had a big old drop coming. That's over 2 pounds I dropped between weeks 3 and weeks 4, which is fantastic. Very happy with that. I kind of knew it was coming. I might have alluded to this in the previous video where I mentioned that I was holding a lot of water. I felt very watery. I was very confident with my process. I felt great. The scales weren't budging. They've caught up now, so we're good. Weigh-ins 5 from 7, so that brings my total loss at this point up to 5.75 pounds, which is lovely. That's in 4 weeks, so we're travelling over that speed we had last time. I think we were about 1.25. Now we're up to nearly 1.5 pounds a week, which is nearly 1%. So as you can see, a very big drop. Now, our aim is to get to this line. It's actually not. I shouldn't say that. Our aim is to get just a bit higher than that. The aim is to get just to this kind of second line to the bottom, which will put us about 164, which would be perfect. I mean, on this trajectory, I'm going to get there by week 10. So I might have to slow that down if that's the case, because I don't mind getting there early. It would be great. I'm just conscious I don't want to get there too early and then have an exit strategy that's really difficult to implement because I'm so hungry. Okay, average macros. So I said this last week, I was lowering my calorie target. So my calorie target was now between 1900 and 2000. Monday to Thursday, like I said, I tracked that and it came in at 1993, 192 grams of protein, 192 grams of carbs, 33 grams of fat, which is a little bit low, and 19 grams of fiber. So in terms of the aims, I absolutely smashed them. All tick boxes for getting them in the ranges that were set. Steps and sessions. So I got all my 5 sessions done. I had 5 set. My daily step target was 9 to 11, and I obviously got 9.7, which is super. Very happy with that. Biometric feedback, sleep. Now, if you're in the UK, y'all know, boy, it was a hot one. So yeah, sleep was, I mean, I would say I'm someone who's very precious about their sleep, and I struggled big time. We ran multiple fans and we still couldn't cool ourselves down. This had a negative impact obviously on energy. Hunger is creeping up anyway at this point, and so it's kind of difficult to say whether the sleep determined that extra bit of hunger or actually it was just the fact that I was just a bit hungrier. Stress, still fine. Although last week, so I'm obviously a week ahead of you guys, last week was a little bit more stressful, and fatigue booted up big time. So fatigue was been down the whole time, but with the lack of sleep and the energy being a lot lower, my recovery was just a little bit poo, and so generally I felt a bit more grumpy, I felt a bit more tired, and fatigue definitely was hitting in this week. Tracking accuracy, I've given myself 80% here because for what I could actually track, I'm really happy with the effort that I put in. I'm really happy with the planning and the way that I stuck to a rough plan of what I had. Did I track everything throughout the week? Hell no, it was impossible. But I did track everything I could, and I maintained a really good process that enabled me to obviously get that 2 pounds of loss. Digestion is slowing up a little bit more, so I've started adding in some cucumber and some lettuce just to get some more volume going through my stomach alongside my veggies for lunch. Mood, yeah, that was that was a bit lower. It's a bit more grumpy last week. All that said and done, training was amazing. Put mind over matter and really got it done, and it was a fantastic week of training. So I'm really pleased with that, and actually that set me up really nicely for the week 5 that was to come. So very chuffed there, very happy. And as you can see, if we look and compare those, just those last ones there across week 3 and 4, tracking accuracy is still there, digestion is starting to slow, mood took a bit of a hit, and training is doing just fine. So on the whole, really, really promising, really happy with how things are going, and yeah, really looking forward to showing you guys week 5. Speak soon.